So, you're tired of playing chess like you're guessing on every move. You want to look at a position and instantly know what you're supposed to be doing, when to develop, when to protect, when to ignore? That's where chess principles come in. They're the patterns strong players rely on, the shortcuts that make complicated positions suddenly feel simple. Today, you're getting 10 core principles that will guide your openings and instantly improve your play. And as usual, nothing theoretical, nothing overwhelming. Just the practical ideas that make the board make sense. And remember, they're not perfect rules. Sometimes the position breaks them, but most of the time they point you in the right direction. Let's start with the opening principles, the foundations of everything that follows. The first principle is control the center early. In the opening, your first job is simple. Claim the center before your opponent does. Why? Because the center gives your pieces more space, more activity, and more control over the game. Let's look at this example, where white's pieces reach deep into the center. They influence key squares, they threaten, they restrict. White is active. Black, on the other hand, isn't fighting for the same squares. He's basically fighting for weaker squares than white. That's what controlling the center actually means. Your pieces get space, activity, and purpose. The second principle is, don't bring your queen out too early. Your queen is powerful, yes, but in the opening, she's also a target. Here's why bringing her out early is a problem. White tries the famous hope chess attack with this move. Black simply develops a knight, defends everything, and then kicks the queen around with g6. Every time the queen moves, white falls further behind. Meanwhile, black just develops smoothly. Early queen adventures look tempting, but they almost always lose time. Principle number 3. Castle as soon as it's safe. The opening can get sharp fast, and the center is the last place you want your king to be. In the first 10 moves, both players are developing pieces, opening diagonals, trading pawns, and creating tension. That tension means files are about to be open. And anytime a file opens, a king in the center becomes a target. Castling solves this instantly. When you castle, you do 3 things at once. You move your king to safety, you activate a rook into the center, you connect your pieces for the middle game. That's why strong players castle early. It's not about hiding the king, it's about completing development in the cleanest way possible. Principle number 4, avoid moving the same piece twice in the opening. Your goal in the opening isn't to finish missions with one piece, it's to bring all your pieces into the game quickly. Watch what happens when someone violates this. Black moves the knight 3 times in 4 moves, and gains absolutely nothing. White, meanwhile, develops naturally and gains space. This is how small mistakes create big problems later. Principle number 5. Don't push random pawns in the opening. Every pawn you move does 2 things. It gains space and it creates a weakness. That weakness never goes away. Once you push a pawn, you can't pull it back. So if you push pawns without a purpose, you're not attacking, you're just giving your opponent new targets. In the opening, your pieces want freedom, coordination, and development. Random pawn pushes do the opposite. They open holes, weaken squares, and waste time. Although they feel harmless in the moment, but they quietly damage your position long term. Principle number 6. Don't block your own bishops with pawns. Your bishops are long-range pieces. They're strongest when their diagonals are open, stretching across the board, influencing everything. But the moment you place a pawn in front of them, you're cutting off their vision, their activity, and their purpose. A blocked bishop isn't a piece, it's a decoration. Principle number 7. Develop knights before bishops. Usually in the opening, you need to develop your knights before bishops. Why? Because knights almost always know where they belong in the opening, usually squares like f3 and c3. But on the other hand, bishops are flexible. Sometimes they want to go to c4, sometimes b5, or even stay back on e2 to defend. By developing your knights first, you keep your opponent guessing where your bishops will land. For an example, look at the Italian opening. White develops the knight first to attack the center. Then, only after seeing black's defense, white chooses the most aggressive square for the bishop. If you develop the bishop too early, you might find it staring at a solid wall of pawns, wishing you had placed it somewhere else. Develop the knights, stay flexible, and commit your bishops only when the path is clear. Principle number 8. Always connect your rooks. One of the most common questions players ask is, when does the opening actually end? The answer isn't a specific move number, it's a specific visual on the board. The opening phase is usually complete when your rooks are connected. Look at the back rank here. To connect your rooks, you have to achieve 3 major goals. You've developed your minor pieces, you've secured your king through castling, and you've moved your queen off her starting square. When that last piece moves out of the way and your rooks have a clear line of sight to each other, your position transforms into a fortress. Why is this so important? Connected rooks are twice as powerful because they defend one another. If an opponent tries to infiltrate your back rank, they aren't just facing one rook, they're facing a coordinated duo. Furthermore, connecting them allows you to swing them effortlessly toward the center files to support your middle game breakthroughs. If your rooks are still separated by a stray knight or an unmoved bishop by move 15, your development is lagging behind, and your king is likely less secure than you think. Stop thinking of the opening as just moving pieces out. Think of it as a race to the finish line, and that finish line is the moment your rooks finally shake hands on the back rank. Principle number 9. Don't trade developed pieces for undeveloped ones. One of the most subtle ways to lose your advantage in the opening is by making what I call lazy trades. In chess, time is just as valuable as pieces. If you have spent 2 moves getting a knight to a perfect centralized square like c3 or f3, that piece is worth more in terms of time than a piece that hasn't moved yet. If you jump in and trade your active knight for your opponent's bishop that is still sitting on its starting square, you aren't just trading material, you are deleting your own hard work. Look at this common mistake. While this is a famous opening, look at what happens for the average player. White spends time moving the bishop twice just to trade it off. In return, Black's d-pawn moves, and suddenly their queen and their light-squared bishop both have open diagonals without Black having to do anything. Every time you think about taking an opponent's piece, ask yourself, does this move make me stronger, or does it just finish my opponent's development for them? If your trade wakes up their army and gives them a free path to the center, it's better to keep the tension. Make them work to develop their pieces. Don't do the job for them. Principle number 10. Avoid creating weaknesses you can't defend. In the middle game, one unnecessary pawn move can create a weakness that follows you forever. Weak squares, backward pawns, exposed diagonals. These are long-term problems. In this example, white pushes d5, gaining space, but it also creates the c3 dark square weakness, which black attacks for the rest of the game. Let's see this other board for another example. White weakens the dark squares around the king. Black immediately answers with ice5, exploding the center. Every weakness becomes a target, and targets decide middle games. Only create weaknesses when you can defend them. And those were the 10 opening principles that will completely change how you handle the first phase of the game. If you found these tips helpful, drop something in the comments. It's the best way to support this small channel. And keep the chess content coming. And of course, consider subscribing to the channel. See ya, nerd.